to meeting number 8 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Finance. Pursuant to the order of reference on November 19th, 2020, the committee is meeting on its study of the pre-budget consultations in advance of the 2021 budget. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of September 23rd, 2020. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. So you are aware, the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. I think most everyone is familiar with the rules, so I'll bypass them to save time. We're tight with 4 witnesses in an hour. I would like to welcome our witnesses. We have 4 with us today. I want to first thank most of you in today's appearance have provided submissions prior to August 15th. We appreciate that very much. And so we will start with the Canadian Nurses Association, Mr. Villeneuve, Chief Executive Officer. Mr. Villeneuve, the floor is yours. And if you could try and hold your remarks to about 5 minutes so we get to get as much discussion as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Great.
Great. I'd first like to acknowledge the Algonquin and Anishinaabe peoples from whose traditional lands I'm speaking to you today. My name is Mike Villeneuve and I'm the CEO at the Canadian Nurses Association. I've worked in and around health systems for over 40 years and 37 of those as a registered nurse. I would very much like to thank the committee for the opportunity to present recommendations from CNA, which is the national and global professional voice of Canadian nursing. In this extraordinary global crisis, nurses, who in our country are the largest group of healthcare professionals, are playing an enormous role across the country. We're alarmed by the growing number of cases now being reported and are especially concerned with the spread to Indigenous isolated communities and to vulnerable people who are disproportionately affected. Throughout the pandemic, we've learned important lessons. Pardon me. We've seen challenges with pandemic preparedness across the country and have witnessed the devastating effects of the disease in long-term care homes. We've also seen our healthcare system quickly adapting to the expansion of virtual care. While our August submission recommends a suite of actions, I'd like to focus on 3 of them. First, we strongly recommend that the federal government take a leadership role in redesigning what it means to age in our country. Despite the devastating impact in long-term care homes during the first months of the pandemic, the second wave is rehashing vulnerabilities in the sector. Even with lessons learned, staffing, supplies, and physical plant issues remain critical. To address these challenges, CNA has called on the federal government to lead the development of national standards for institutional long-term care. And we were encouraged to see new investments in the fall economic statement and national standards reflected in the speech from the throne, as well as helping people to age in place. We strongly encourage the committee to support the development of these standards. Furthermore, it's critical that federal health transfers meet the needs of Canada's aging population. It was estimated that aging would drive about 20% of increases in healthcare spending over the next decade. We urge the committee to support a demographic top-up to the Canada Health Transfer, as the pandemic has only exacerbated the challenges older adults face. This would enhance the ability of provinces and territories to deliver care in the longer term, investing in that whole trajectory of home and community care, long-term care, and palliative and end-of-life care. Our second recommendation relates to further enhancing pandemic preparedness. We must all remain focused in fighting the pandemic. It's nowhere near over. Despite the promises of a vaccine on the horizon, we will be in a chronic emergency for months to come. In a recent survey, nurses identified supply of personal protective equipment as one of their top 3 concerns during the second wave of the pandemic. And investments in 2021 must ensure availability of PPE, capacity to conduct viral testing and contact tracing, and an equitable distribution of vaccines, especially to vulnerable groups. Finally, CNA encourages the committee to support expanding virtual care. The sudden acceleration in virtual care has been a long-awaited shift for our health system. This is good. While barriers still exist, the role of virtual care should be scaled up. Virtual care can lower costs and improve access to healthcare, particularly for Indigenous people and others in rural and remote areas, and people who struggle in any way to access primary care. However, to expand virtual care, fast and affordable internet access needs to be made available to all. And here we know the government can exert a strong and helpful influence. In closing, the COVID-19 pandemic has caused unparalleled disruptions to social, health, and economic systems around the globe, as I don't need to tell any of you. We have an opportunity, though, now to bring about some essential transformations to our healthcare system and create a safer, healthier, and more equitable society for all. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I will do my best to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Villeneuve, and again, thank you for your submission. With the Community Food Centres Canada, Mr. Saul, President and CEO. Mr. Saul, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I hope you're all doing okay in these unsettled and unsettling times. I'm joined with my colleague, Sasha McNichol, who's our Senior Specialist Policy, and we'll both be answering questions. Community Food Centres Canada is a national organization that creates vibrant community food centres and programs in low-income neighbourhoods across the country. Through our more than 200 organizational partners, we support people living in poverty and food insecurity to eat well, find community, and work towards social justice. It'll come as no surprise to this committee that COVID has exacerbated some of the deep social inequities that the communities we work in have grappled with for a long time. Food insecurity is up a shocking 39%, meaning that 1 in 7 Canadians now struggles to put food on the table. This corroborates what we are hearing from our partners who have seen the needs in their communities skyrocket. For example, the Depot Community Food Centre in Montreal had to move into a hockey arena in order to meet the needs of people seeking support. The federal government has responded to this emergency with the $200 million Emergency Food Security Fund, which, along with other private funds, has helped us provide good food for 500,000 Canadians. Long term, however, we know that providing food through charity will not solve this problem. Reducing poverty by boosting incomes is the key to reducing food insecurity in Canada. For example, the Canada Child Benefit has reduced food insecurity, severe food insecurity among families with children by 30%. Upon reaching the age of 65 and becoming eligible for seniors benefits like old age security, the guaranteed income supplement, and CPP, people's risk of food insecurity decreases by half, a full 50%. It is now time to build on these achievements in order to create a just recovery from COVID and to continue the work toward a 50% reduction in poverty as laid out in Canada's poverty reduction strategy. Our pre-budget submission proposes 2 ways to help us get there. The first is to make the disability tax credit refundable. To this end, Community Food Centres Canada was pleased to see a Canada Disability Benefit included in the speech from the throne. 2.7 million Canadians live with severe or very severe disability. These Canadians are more likely to be unemployed, and 30% live below the low-income measure. Because the disability tax credit is non-refundable, however, it only serves to decrease tax owing and is therefore of little use to people with disabilities living on low incomes who pay no or little income tax. Making the disability tax credit refundable will provide low-income Canadians with severe and prolonged disabilities with up to $1,300 per year. This may not seem like a lot, but for a single person on disability supports living in Ontario, it would represent a 9% increase in their income. The federal government should also look into increasing the disability tax credit. Our second recommendation is to explore the creation of a tax credit for working age adults. As I mentioned, the Canada Child Benefit and seniors benefits have decreased food insecurity among families with children and seniors. But for single adults, poverty has increased. They also make up 43% of all food insecure Canadians. Working age adults are increasingly being trapped in poverty by low-wage jobs and insufficient social assistance rates. 2/3 of food secure people get most of their income from employment, but the kinds of jobs available do not pay enough to provide a comfortable and dignified life. Indeed, many of the top growing sectors over the last decade, including retail, accommodation, and food services, provide the lowest quality jobs in terms of wages and benefits. Many low-income adults rely on provincial and territorial social assistance, which in no jurisdiction in Canada comes anywhere near the poverty line. In Ontario, for example, a single person on welfare receives $733 a month, which is about 1/3 of the poverty line. In order to be successful in reducing poverty by 50% by 2030, Canada's poverty reduction strategy will need to provide more significant support for single adults aged 18 to 64. A working age tax credit, which would bolster incomes for low-wage workers and people living on social assistance, would also create a higher income floor beneath which no Canadian could fall. We want to build a society focused on thriving for moral and economic reasons, but also because greater equity will help inoculate us against future shocks. Creating an income floor that no one in this country can fall below is the right thing to do. Making the disability tax credit refundable and developing a refundable working age tax credit will have a significant material impact on this goal. Again, thank you for the opportunity to be here today to discuss how to reduce food insecurity and poverty in Canada. My colleague and I, Sasha, look forward to answering any of your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Salyers. You're all right in time. This is a good start. Turning to Skills Canada, Ms. Thorson, you're on. Yes, Mr. Thorson, sorry.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I begin, I first want to acknowledge that I'm speaking from the unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. I want to thank the committee for the opportunity to speak to you today. Skills Competence Canada's mission is to encourage and support a pan-Canadian approach to promoting careers in the skilled trades and technologies to youth and their communities. With Skills Canada member organizations in each of the provinces and territories, we're able to connect to more than 100,000 Canadian youth on an annual basis. With the help of our many public and private sector partners, including union training centers, technical institutes, polytechnics, and community colleges, SCC is helping to address the skills gap issue that is touching many sectors across the country. The activity that we are probably best known for is skills competitions. Through this activity, we put tools and materials in the hands of students in an effort to familiarize them with the many career options available. If you've not been to a skills competition, we demystify many of these occupations by hosting events in publicly accessible facilities where visitors can watch competitors prepare a 4-course meal, build structures, including electrical and water service, repair vehicles, create information technology networks, websites, and much more. In addition, students from surrounding schools are able to participate in trade and technology activities. As the country continues to deal with the impacts of COVID-19, we believe that a skills-based economy and skills-led recovery will contribute to the strengthening of our communities. According to a national survey that we conducted in July, close to 8 in 10 Canadians agreed that the COVID-19 pandemic brought to their attention the importance of the many essential workers in the skilled trades and technology sectors. This increased awareness amongst Canadians of the many essential occupations in the skilled trades and technologies presents an opportunity to attract and create a diverse and inclusive workforce, which will strengthen the country. Possible increases in domestic manufacturing, new infrastructure projects, and the impact of technology all bring with them opportunities to return to pre-COVID-19 levels and see economic growth. To do this, Canada will require the right mix of skills to respond to these demands. For these reasons, not only youth, but maybe even more importantly, career influencers, such as parents, teachers, and employers should be targeted with outreach. For Canada to build a diversified workforce, it requires parents to encourage their children to investigate many career options. It requires teachers and instructors to understand the apprenticeship system and Red Seal certification so they can provide relevant training, guidance, and endorse these careers. It also requires employers to hire apprentices and support the on-the-job training model that has been in existence since the Middle Ages. Our survey in July also revealed that 46% of Canadians are mostly unfamiliar with the apprenticeship training system. This lack of knowledge undoubtedly contributes to our nation's challenge in recruiting people to these occupations. Most Canadians understand how more traditional systems of education function, making it easier to endorse those learning models. Contrastingly, the apprenticeship model that encompasses 80% on the job and 20% in-school training is very different from the training and education that is often based out of a single training institution. In general, we are witnessing how the required skills in these industries are quickly changing, forcing us to contemplate the impact on our skills development strategy and how we can quickly adjust our training programs. In the context of the current pandemic, and also due to our increasingly digitized world, skilled trades and technology occupations had never been so relevant and interesting. As a result, it only makes sense that through a variety of tailored approaches, the federal government invests further in the awareness and promotion of such career paths. The federal government, along with its provincial and territorial partners, must look at supporting skills development and the modernization of training that will realistically meet our future economic needs. In closing, we recommend the federal government fund the following. 1, the promotion and orientation of skilled trade and technology-based occupations, targeting underrepresented youth and people in career transition, including women, Indigenous peoples, persons with a disability, those from underserved communities, and those who are part of the LGBTQ2S+ community. 2, national awareness initiatives aimed at engaging parents on how the apprenticeship training system in Canada works, on the importance of the essential skills, and on recognizing the Red Seal endorsement RSE acronym as a standard of Red Seal completion in the skilled trades. 3, support the work required to identify current and emerging technologies and how those technologies are and will be applied in apprenticeship and technology-based occupation training models. And lastly, support the creation of a multi-sectoral skills strategy that links recommendations 1, 2, and 3 into an overall skills promotion and skills development approach linked to the skills Canada needs now and in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I will answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Turning then to Water Power Canada, Patrick Bateman, interim president. Mr. Bateman.
Good afternoon. First of all, thanks to you, Mr. Chairman, as well as to the clerk of the committee, and thanks as well to the members of the committee for having invited Water Power Canada to testify on these pre-budget consultations.
And thanks also to the members of the committee and to all those contributing to this consultation for supporting and serving our communities during these challenging times. I too am coming to you today from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin people, and I'm very grateful to have the pleasure to work and live here also. Water Power Canada is the national trade association that represents the producers of hydroelectricity and their suppliers of goods and services. Electricity is an essential service, and water power represents 60% of our total electricity production in Canada. Our sector's track record for more than a century has been playing a major role keeping Canada's lights on. And thanks to the preparedness and response of our members and their workforce, we've overseen the reliable operations of more than 500 water power generation stations throughout the pandemic. These continue to power critical services such as hospitals, communication networks, and food supply chains across the nation. In early March, as the reality of the pandemic set in, our sector was deep in preparations for the freshet. That's the spring thaw that places increased demands and pressure on our infrastructure. By mid-March, pandemic response plans and protocols were rapidly implemented. Only works critical for the safe, reliable, and optimal operation of the generation fleet proceeded. All others were deferred. Workplace practices in the office and in the field were dramatically overhauled to assure the health and safety of our employees and contractors. And we're proud of our role in supporting Canada's pandemic response. The government is currently directing emergency support where it is most urgently needed. We're still in the thick of the pandemic. But once the greatest danger of this crisis has passed, the economy will need a serious boost. And that must accomplish two things: getting Canadians back to work and addressing the climate crisis. Canada is one of the few countries in the world uniquely positioned to move toward and beyond a 90% non-emitting electricity supply. We have a competitive advantage through our abundant and diverse, clean and renewable electricity resources, including water power. Building on these strengths, leveraging these existing competitive advantages, and creating the right conditions for investment will support recovery efforts and will reinforce clean growth priorities. Investments made by our sector in refurbishment and redevelopment of existing assets provides additional generation and storage capacity at a very low unit cost and with a minimal incremental environmental footprint. New transmission capacity can connect regions with abundant clean and renewable energy supply to those that are phasing out coal. The water stored in our reservoirs can be leveraged as the battery that balances supply and demand. Projects such as pumped storage hydro, which uses water and gravity to store and generate electricity, and green hydrogen, for example, can ensure the reliable integration of variable renewable energy resources such as wind and solar. These potential investments represent tens of thousands of new jobs and the avoidance of hundreds of millions of tons of greenhouse gas emissions annually. As our brief submitted to the committee in August outlines, there are ways to create the conditions necessary to move clean and renewable energy projects forward. Firstly, designing and implementing strong measures for decarbonisation of Canada's electricity supply. We welcome the introduction of Bill C-12 and references in the fall economic statement on the importance of strategic transmission interties. Secondly, designing and implementing strong measures for fuel switching from fossil fuels to clean and renewable electricity in transport, to industry and buildings. We welcome the measures in the fall economic statement related to electrification, and we anticipate the Clean Fuel Standard. Thirdly, ensuring that the implementation of federal legislation does not introduce any undue or overly burdensome constraints on water power producers, so that the regulatory environment does not impede investment in existing or new projects. Despite our abundance of clean electricity, only 20% of the energy we use is electric. Demand growth from electrification, combined with stringent and stable long-term climate policy, is critical for our sector to maximize our investments in the coming years and to help power Canada's recovery, a recovery that will be durable, national, and renewable. Thank you again for the opportunity to appear. I look forward to addressing any questions that the committee may have. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you all for your presentations and for keeping them so tight. And we have your recommendations in paper as well. So we'll turn to the first round of questions. I might remind committee members that we will we'll have time for, because we're not in our usual 1.5 hour hearing schedule. We will only get an hour. There'll be the 4 6-minute questions and the 2 5s, and that will likely end it. So if people want to split their time, just let me know. We'll start with Mr. Kelly for 6 minutes. Mr. Kelly.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses. I'll see if I can get a question or two in with each of you, but I'll start with Skills Canada, and perhaps Mr. Thorson, do you have specific? You spoke of skills deficits, and could you elaborate on some of the specific industries and specific needs of our that are not being currently met in the labor market, and what skills are the most lacking in our labor, that are most in need in our labor force, that are not being supplied?
Yeah, I think when we're talking about skills gaps. We're talking about the correct skills that are required for the different occupations. Targeting that specifically across the country is sometimes difficult because there are regional differences that really impact those occupations. But some of those, for example, are steam fitter, pipe fitter is one of those occupations. Electricians are areas that are in demand. Welders in particular, there are special welding level categories where there are demands for those specific areas. But I think the more important element here is we really want to make sure that students and young people and the population in general understand that there are these different career options available. And as I mentioned, I think during the pandemic, especially in the spring, when we were really relying on transportation systems to get food to grocery stores, relying on people to repair those vehicles, our communication systems, make sure that electrical grids were functioning properly so that we could all function from our homes. It was obviously very apparent to people that we definitely need people in these skilled occupations, and it is challenging across the country.
Okay, you mentioned specifically your recommendation was that the federal government fund, but then you went general and said programs aimed at underrepresented populations in various trades and the retraining of workers. Or were there specific programs that you want to elaborate on or mention in the time you have with us?
Yeah, I think what we definitely need to identify success stories, individuals that are representative of the diversity and an inclusive workforce. We want to make sure that people in the community can identify with someone.
Okay,
they
you weren't
identify
identifying a particular program though that you were looking for.
Not identifying a specific program, okay. But I think our goal is when we're trying to engage these people, we want to put tools and materials in the hands of young people, okay. And in the hands of parents.
Okay, I'll move to Mr. Saul if I may. You mentioned in your statement that aid measures alone will not cure food security in the long run, and I certainly would agree with that. And I think that no one will be surprised of the tremendous demands placed on your member organizations during the pandemic. Returning as many people as safely as possible and as quickly as possible to the workforce will undoubtedly alleviate some of this demand. Moving to your one of your specific recommendations on the disability tax credit. Perhaps I'll let you comment a little further on that. In fact, I'll just turn that over to you if you want to elaborate on that first recommendation, how you see that working maybe in concert with existing funding for disabled Canadians.
Well, I'm going to let my colleague Sasha talk about the disability tax credit, but I'll first just respond very quickly about our concerns around charity. Food will not solve hunger, only income will. And that's, if you remember anything from our comments, it's that. We need to ensure people have enough money in their pockets to make the decisions they need to make. And as I mentioned in my remarks, 65% of people who are food insecure in this country have an attachment to the labor market, which speaks to just how low wage those jobs are and how precarious they are. So 4.5 million Canadians struggle with food insecurity, meaning they're just completely unsure, concerned about where their next meal is going to come from. And the only way we're going to solve that is to focus on income measures. So I'll just pass this quickly to Sasha to talk about the disability tax credit.
Thank you for your question. I think as Nick mentioned, people living on disability supports in Ontario, if you're a single person, you're making about $1,100 a month. Clearly not enough to cover the cost of living, let alone the increased costs that often come with living in disability. So making the DTC refundable would be of huge help to people who are living on provincial and territorial disability support.
Sorry, Pat.
Just short of.
Sorry, Pat. We're a little over time.
We will. Not a 6-minute round?
Yeah, it is. You've been 6 minutes and 20 seconds. How time flies. So we'll turn to Ms. Zerowitz and Mr. Fragascatis, who are splitting their time. Ms. Zerowitz.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and please cut me off at 3 minutes, although I have my timer going. So please, to everyone who I'm asking questions, please be as succinct as possible. First, a huge thanks to all of you for your excellent and important presentations. If we don't get to you today, know that your recommendations have been very heard. My first question is to the Community Food Centres Canada. Thank you once again for coming before our committee. I have 2 quick questions for you. I hear loud and clear your disability tax credit recommendation and your tax credit for single working age adults. Do you have a figure for us about how much each of these tax credits would cost our government? 1, and 2, how many Canadians each one of those would help?
I'm going to let Sasha
I can take this.
I'll let Sasha go here.
Thank you.
So for the disability tax credit, the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives has estimated that it would be about $370 million a year in order to make that refundable for the people who are currently receiving it, which I believe is about 1.2 million Canadians. However, that's if it were made refundable, it's likely that people who could apply for it and who haven't applied for it, who are eligible, would then apply for it. And so it might be more, with some behavior change, it might be more expensive than that, but somewhere around $370 million a year. For the working age tax credit, this is not something that there's a lot of research on. And so we haven't actually, we don't actually have a figure for that, although it's something that we are about to do research in, and we'll of course update you with a figure when we have one.
Thank you so much for that. I'm going to turn my attention to Mr. Thorson. Mr. Thorson, about 600,000 Canadians are still looking for a job right now, so about almost 80% have gone back to their old jobs. But we also have heard that there's a number of jobs in areas like construction, healthcare, some food processing, agriculture, and a few number of other areas. Why do you think that there seems to be a skills mismatch? Would you agree with that? And why do you think that is, and how do we correct it?
Yes, thank you for the question. I would agree that it is a skills mismatch or a skills gap. And I think one of the reasons is that, as I mentioned in my brief, the apprenticeship system is not necessarily understood by most Canadians, how the system works, how that training takes place. And parents and many influencers are still a little reluctant to promote skilled trades occupations to young people, to really present that as a viable career option and as a first choice career option.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Thorson. I think that's my 3 minutes. Over to you, Peter.
Mr. Vegascatis.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the witnesses. My questions will go to the CNA. Mr. Villeneuve, thank you for your work, for the work of the organization, and of course all nurses across Canada. I especially have in mind the local and all nurses in London, Ontario, especially those at LHSC, at St. Joseph's, but all nurses beyond that too. Wanted to ask you, sir, read the statement that the CNA put out yesterday in response to the fall economic statement that Mr. Freeland read in Parliament. I did see that the organization spoke positively about long-term care and what the government said about that, about all the work that the government has done to procure PPE on public health when it comes to Indigenous communities. That work is ongoing and positive. But I did see there was a couple points that stood out to me in the press release that the government can further act upon. One is mental health of nurses. Could you speak to that issue and your concerns there? And something else that you've mentioned here today, but I wonder if you would elaborate upon, and that is virtual healthcare and what you would want to see the federal government do to address that challenge, or that possibility, I should say.
Thank you very much for the question. The mental health state of nurses has been a concern from early on, first because of fatigue that we projected, but then because of the sorts of moral decisions that were being made in other countries, we were pretty concerned about the challenges they were facing at points of care, physicians and others too, but since we're speaking about nurses. So we did a survey at CNA of a group of nurses who reported before COVID that their mental health was rated as good or excellent, and there was 80% of them rated that. It's down to about 45% at this point in the pandemic. So that's a serious change. We're hearing every day about unbelievable fatigue, the burden of watching people die with their families on the other side of a window and so on. It's just sort of compounded levels of grief and fatigue. There's no buffer in the system. There's no other group to come in and help take over. So I think they're pretty pressed. And one of the challenges we all face in this country is that a lot of mental health care, you have to wait a long time for it and you have to pay. So we certainly hope that governments will do all they can to support access to mental health for all healthcare providers. We could talk about society later. at rates they can afford, or if not that, then free. Your second question about virtual care, as you know, it's sort of been this thing that was this giant barrier since time immemorial that suddenly was freed up, which is a very good outcome of the pandemic. And now we need to understand, it seems to be working pretty well. Some places, 76% of primary care is delivered virtually. So who's it working well for? Who has broadband and who doesn't? That's a serious problem. And in my beautiful home in farmland here in Eastern Ontario, I sometimes might as well be in Iqaluit. It's hit and miss. I worry even on these sorts of appearances, will I have broadband? So if we want people to work at home, see their doctors and so on, send pictures and videos of their problems, we really need a strong hand in expanding access to broadband.
Thank you.
I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you
very
both.
much.
I hate to end it so quickly. Mr. Lemire, 5 minutes, followed by Mr. Julian, or 6 minutes, followed by Mr. Julian.
Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, thanks to all the witnesses for the concern you've shown for all the most vulnerable people in our society. And my first question is to Mr. Villeneuve from the Canadian Nursing Association. Right now in the Commons, there is a motion by the Bloc welcoming the health services, especially nurses, for their services to the community and to the population, and that recognizes the courage of nurses and for their being in the first responders, and calling for increased budgeting and for calling for greater efficiency and effectiveness before the end of the year in order to help provinces, health workers, and the population. So my question is a very simple one. We know that since September, there was a joint call by the provinces for a significant increase in federal funding for health care, and we are requesting 28 billion more, and an increase in the proportion paid for by the federal government. And would this help solve most of the recommendations you've made in your presentation?
Thank you for the question. Certainly, we would think it would go a long way. We believe it's about 22% now, and as you all will know, that has dropped through the years. What we're facing across society that concerns us, I think, the most in the short term is just the huge number of older folks. And I'll be honest, I'm the back end of the baby boom. I'm 62. So there's a lot of those folks that are 75 plus now who are going to need care soon. And there's no way ever that we're going to build what they estimate is 300,000 new beds. So we're going to need to find some funding and great thinking to imagine how are we going to care for all those people? Where is that going to happen? Hence our recommendation, which is to take 22% of the 93 billion recommended by the Conference Board of Canada as a top up to at least help to transition and provide better care in the long term, not just long-term care, for people in homes, communities, church basements, and so on, so that we can try to get something of a handle on this, because it's right now. It's not a theory anymore. It's right now. I hope that helps.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Talking about the elderly, and the community food banks, and is there representation in food banks everywhere, and is there an increase in the old age security? Would that help without penalizing anybody, and help address the problems caused by poverty and a lack of access to services?
Yes, I'll quickly respond that I can't speak for the food banks. Community Food Centers Canada have a very different model that is more upstream and preventative. About 27% of people who use our community food centers across the country are seniors. We're very concerned right now about their feeling isolated and lonely. There is no question that if we continue to put money into GIS, OAS, CPP, et cetera, that it will have a very important impact on their status in terms of vulnerability. So the data is really clear on this. If you put money into programs like child tax benefit and seniors programming, it materially impacts food insecurity and reduces poverty in this country, which is what we should be doing. So we're talking about using current infrastructure that's out there, although we're also talking about building a refundable tax credit for working age adults. But we have these systems in place, and if we put money into them, they reduce food insecurity and reduce poverty. It's pretty simple. There's a direct correlation between income and reducing food insecurity.
And one last question for Mr. Bateman from Hydroelectricity Canada and the C12 bill, where there is the commitments with regard to Paris Agreement. And is the transportation sector and its commitments taken seriously enough by the government with regard to increased growth in your industry?
Merci, Monsieur Le Maire.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lemire.
It's an ongoing question, I think, with the fall economic statement, with the bill progressing through the House. It's something that we're watching very closely. Long-term stable climate policy and electrification are two factors that are very important for our sector. And I think we'll continue to watch how that unfolds with great interest in the coming months.
To Mr. Julian. Peter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Sorry, we didn't get tested beforehand, so I'm just looking to the clerk to make sure I get a thumbs up on the sound. All right, great. Thanks to all our witnesses for being here, and we hope that you and your loved ones are safe and healthy during this pandemic. It's very good of you to give testimony today that will help hopefully form some of what we should see in a spring budget. And I'd like to start with you, Mr. Villeneuve. I have three questions. First, what the CNA and our thanks go to all the frontline workers and nurses across the country who have shown such courage during this pandemic. What you're calling for is an investment, a demographic top-up transfer that is slightly less than the cutbacks we've seen over the last 5 years. And I'm wondering whether that demographic top-up is in addition to restoring the full healthcare funding that was slashed by the former Harper government and continued by the current government. And we've seen the impacts of that. My second question is around long-term care and what you think is needed. Should long-term care really come under the Canada Health Act as part of ensuring that there is a publicly administered long-term care and long-term care standards across the country to avoid the nightmare that we have seen repeated numerous times often in private long-term care homes over the course of the last few months. And thirdly, the issue of pharmacare. Now we've got before the House of Commons Bill C-213, which is the Canada Pharmacare Act. MPs will be voting on it in February. It would provide the legal framework for universal publicly administered access to medication. To what extent do you think, and do Canada's nurses think, it would be a good idea to have universal pharmacare to add and to strengthen our healthcare system? So those are my three questions to start. Thank you.
Just to interrupt for a sec to Mr. Villeneuve. Mr. Falk, you'll be next up after this round.
Thanks, Chair, and I'll do my best to answer the questions quite quickly. CNA has a long-standing position in strong support of universal pharmacare and would be very pleased to see that go forward as a key piece of Medicare. I'll work backwards. You're asking a lot of me to remember three things. Around long-term care, that whole sector has been not well treated at the best, and at the worst has been kind of neglected. We have watched over several decades as the amount of acuity inside those places climbs at a level that if you've not been in one, I think you'd be shocked. Certainly when I graduated, many of those patients would have been in a hospital with a registered nurse. So as we've moved care out to homes and communities and long-term care, we have not shifted budgets, interests, professional supports, funding, leadership, training, all those pieces. So now we have a a very well-intended workforce that is largely made up of unregulated providers doing their very best. And we need a really big multi-billion-dollar investment in that sector to cast it anew, starting with staffing, wages, physical plant. Some of those places, it would never be allowed in a hospital. So the whole sector needs a discussion, and really we need to frame what do we expect as Canadians to get as we age, starting at home so we don't have to go to those places, and right through to end of life care. Your first question, I'll try to be as quick as I can. If I'm understanding you correctly, we took the figures calculated by the Conference Board of Canada, which was the $93 billion over 10 years, and took a 22% cut of that. And so it's somewhere around 13 billion in the first 5, up to a total of 21.1 billion over 10 years. We approached it that way, if that helps answer your question.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. And what I hear you saying, as well as many people have said, is that we need to work on the revenue side to build up the resources to make these investments. That means taxing billionaires, cracking down on overseas tax havens, making the web giant companies pay their fair share of taxes. That's how we create the fiscal ability to do these things. So thank you very much for that. Mr. Saul and Ms. McNichol, 2 things regarding the disability tax credit and people with disabilities generally. What percentage of people going to community, the community food centers are people with disabilities, and you've stated very clearly that we need to make it refundable, the DTC. The reality is most people with disabilities aren't on the DTC. Do you have any recommendations about how to increase access so that everybody with a disability across the country can actually access the disability tax credit?
A fairly tight answer there, if you could, folks.
Okay, sure. About 22% of people who go to community food centers are on disability support. And I would say 2 things to your last question, Mr. Julian. The first is that it's quite a difficult credit to get. And so a lot of people, like sometimes you just have to do your taxes and then you get a tax credit. There's a lot more involved in this. So anything the federal government can do to kind of simplify that would be great for these people. And the other is that I think you'd find a lot more people would be signing up for it if they could get that $1,300 a year. And so I think it's about 1.5 million people who could potentially get it who don't. And I think those 2 things would help, making it simplifying it, and then making it refundable. Thank you for your question.
Thank you all. Then turning to Mr. Falk, will be followed by Mr. Fraser, and we're into a 5-minute round.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all our witnesses for your presentations and for the good work and advocacy that your associations represent. I'm going to start with Mr. Villeneuve. Mr. Villeneuve, you've talked about the mental health of your frontline workers, of nurses in particular. I'm just wondering, that's something that's ongoing, and especially with COVID, they're concerned. Have I caught COVID? Am I going to get COVID? I'm working on the front lines. Can you tell me a little bit, if we had rapid testing, how would that help the mental health of your nurses, of your frontline workers, if we had it? And what do you see for its future going ahead?
Well, I think we're learning. Thank you for the question. I think we're learning a lot about that, and that it is. It's a very promising practice. I think for sure it would help workers in all the front lines, even the grocery store, everybody, to have that test that we could turn around quite quickly. There certainly is a concern, Mr. Chair, from nurses about, am I going to get it? But in reality, in places like hospitals where things are pretty tight now around PPE, they're some of the safer places to be. It's more on the margins. It's the home care and some of those places where that we hear that concern. The mental health issues we're hearing is somewhat that, there's no question, but it's an awful lot about compounding grief and absolute fatigue. Nursing homes where people haven't left for 14 days in a row, 12-hour shifts. Like it's just an actual human fatigue issue. And a lot of the fear around, am I going to catch it, is, am I going to transmit it to my family? So we are hearing those issues. So I think everything we could do, everything governments can do to get us rapid testing as quickly as possible would be good.
Great. Thank you for that answer. Mr. Saul, I'd like to turn to you for a moment. You spoke briefly about the work that you do with your community food centers. Could you comment on, and I know you're not working on the front line, but maybe you've heard stories from your frontline workers. Could you comment on the benefit or that individuals have received with the CERB, or how that has impacted the people that service your facilities? What has the impact been? Has it been a good thing or has it been a negative thing? And how has that money been used from what you're hearing?
Well, CERB has been a lifesaver. We would have been hit with a tsunami in our community food centers of people being desperate. So the irony of CERB is that it's completely highlighted how inadequate our social support systems are. CERB is about $2,000 a month, as you know, which if you get that over a year, that's the poverty line, $24,000 a year for a single person. As I mentioned in my remarks, social assistance rates, I mean, CERB gives you 2 or 3 times more than any social assistance rate across this country. And you'd have to be making about 21 bucks an hour full time to get the same on CERB as you would on EI. So I think CERB has been very, very important to stabilizing people's lives, to be able to land in an okay position and then start to try and figure out how to rebuild. So been critical for our work. I think we would have been completely smashed if there hadn't have been those kinds of income support. So there's been a bit of emergency relief via food, but without those income supports, we would have been trouble.
Okay, thank you. And turning to Mr. Bateman, just on the power front, you mentioned in your brief that the regulatory burden is significant for your industry. We know that hydroelectricity is the cleanest, greenest power we have here in Canada. Could you comment a little bit on the regulatory burden from the Fisheries Act and also from the Navigable Waters Act?
For sure. Thank you, Mr. Falk, for the question, and thank you also for your kind words. I think just with respect to the limited time that you have here, I'll undertake to follow up with that question with a written response, because the answer is probably much longer than the time that you have today.
Fair enough. I think I'm out of time.
Thank you. Offer Mr. Bateman, and we look forward to that somewhat detailed response. Then we'll turn to the last 5 minutes this panel, and Mr. Fraser and Mr. McLeod are splitting. Mr. Fraser first.
Thank you very much. I'll start with Mr. Saul. For what it's worth, to me, it is unconscionable that in a nation as wealthy as Canada, we still have questions about our neighbors being able to afford food. You've quite articulately pointed out that food won't solve hunger, but that income will. You cited the Canada Child Benefit as one example where you actually saw a meaningful reduction in food insecurity when we simply got money to people that didn't have it before. For what it's worth, to pick up where Mr. Falk left off, I'm hearing from food banks in my community that when CERB landed on people's kitchen tables, they didn't go to food banks as often as they did before the pandemic. This indicates the magnitude of the problem to me. You made a couple of specific suggestions, but I'm thinking more broadly, can you comment on the importance, essentially, of finding people who don't have money that might be going through the demonizing process of applying for social assistance where their life choices are judged? And can you explain, when people are actually given money, in your experience, do they spend it on things like food and housing and basic needs, or do they fall into the tired old trope of people who spend it on vices, whether it's drugs or alcohol? Because the answer is clear as day in my community. People spend money on what they need.
Well, I'm just going to echo what you're saying. Poverty is not about a lifestyle choice or a character flaw or about poor budgeting. It's about low wages. It's about inadequate social supports. And people want to work. People want to contribute. People have things they want to get done in their lives and make sure that their kids are safe and healthy and move well. So it's very, very clear that if you support people, they contribute, and they keep those dollars in the economy and they keep the economy going. We probably put out about $10 million in grocery gift cards so that people had that income to keep the economy going. When those grocery gift cards disappear and they have income, it keeps the economy going. So it is unconscionable to me that we are signatories to the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights around the right to food. It is our duty to respect, protect, and fulfill the right to food. And the fact that 4.5 million of our fellow citizens, about 12 to 14%. And look, if you look at that number, if you're white, it's about 11%. If you're a new immigrant, it's about 17%. If you're Black, it's 30%. If you're Indigenous, it's about 30. If you go north to Nunavut, it's over 50% of people are food insecure. So we have a lot of work to do on this. And I want to be really clear and underline this. It is not about charity. It's ensuring that people have good jobs that aren't precarious, where they have good incomes and they can go home to a full fridge, not an empty fridge. So the kinds of recommendations we're making here are about putting income in people's pockets and they spend it in their communities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I
Thank you
think
very
that's
much.
my time.
Yeah, your time's. We will go to the north now. Mr. McLeod to wrap it up. Mr. McLeod.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. A question to Skills Canada. Your first recommendation addresses the promotion of skills development for Indigenous people. We saw in yesterday's statement by Minister Freeland a commitment of $144.2 million in next fiscal year towards the ISET, or the Indigenous Skills and Employment Training Program. Would you consider this a good start towards meeting your recommendation, or and where would you like to see the government go from here?
Yes, absolutely great to see that direction, that announcement. So definitely supports what we're talking about. And as I mentioned earlier, we really want to put tools and materials in the hands of whether that's youth, Indigenous youth, so that they have the best understanding possible about the career options in skilled trades. So definitely we support the announcement from yesterday.
Thank you. We will have to end it there. I hope within a couple of weeks we can get back to our hour-and-a-half schedule. This is pretty fast and rapid. Look to the witnesses. Thank you very much for your presentations, submissions, and thank you for appearing as a witness today. I know it was in fairly short notice for some. If there is something you think you've missed, drop the clerk a note, and we'll. Mr. Bateman, I believe you are going to provide a little further information as well. So, thank you for your presentations again, and we wish you. We wish you well and stay healthy. With that, I will suspend for the next panel. Meeting suspended. Convene, and I'd like to welcome the second panel to the Finance Committee on our continuing hearings on pre-budget consultations in advance of the 2021 budget. I'll not go through all the preliminaries because we're going to be very, very tight in time. I would say to the Conservatives that you wanted the second panel to be the same as the first in terms of questioners. If you want to change that because we're only going to get 2 people on, or you split your time, think about that and just let me or the clerk know. So we will, and the first one up on questions will be Mr. Kelly, followed by Ms. Katrakis. So we'll start with our witnesses with the Canadian Produce Marketing Association, Mr. Lemaire, President. Ron, you're on. 5 minutes if you could, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and honourable members of the committee. On behalf of the Canadian fresh fruit and vegetable supply chain, I welcome the opportunity to share our recommendations for Budget 2021. Since the start of the pandemic, the fresh fruit and vegetable supply chain has seen massive shifts in our markets, changing retail sales patterns, the rise of e-commerce, and major disturbances in food service. We recognize there will be winners and losers as we emerge from 2020. Today, my comments will focus on the need for a financial protection mechanism for produce sellers in Canada, a tool which has long been a priority for our sector and has only been intensified by the COVID-19 environment. Other programs and tools which also require consideration include the swift deployment of the Universal Broadband Fund and other critical infrastructure, targeted tax credits for essential services to support required changes in COVID business practices, including the purchase of new equipment and PPE, and additionally, more effective programs to support our domestic food supply as an essential sector and bolster food security in Canada. Our recommendations can be found in our submitted brief and more information in our comprehensive report, which outlines 24 recommendations for government action to support our sector in COVID recovery. Now we have an immediate need for a Canadian limited statutory deemed trust to effectively protect produce sellers during buyer bankruptcy in Canada. This is at no cost to the government and would provide an avenue to reinstatement of protection in the U.S. for our exporters. Growing, harvesting, packing, and selling fruit and vegetables comes with a number of risks. COVID has only created greater challenges as overhead and capital costs continue to rise, while returns are delayed until the product is sold and payment is collected down the supply chain, usually long after the farmer or produce seller has shipped their product. We know bankruptcies are coming. Federal support, loans, and credit have created a false sense of security. Economists have already coined the term zombie companies, which are leveraging federal programs or tapping banks for more credit. The pandemic over the next 2 years will drive Canadian produce companies into bankruptcy. We anticipate company failures, especially among hard-hit food service businesses, and these closures will be felt by urban Canadians, where their favorite restaurant will be missed, but they will be felt perhaps the hardest in rural Canada, where farmers will be forced off the family farm. In the case of an insolvent buyer, the current super priority provision for farmers fails to protect effectively our sector, as the terms of payment for fresh produce sales regularly extend beyond the 15 days between delivery and buyer bankruptcy, as prescribed by the Act. Sellers of fresh produce are rarely able to recover their product, as other commodities are most often able to do under the BIA. Canadian fruit and vegetable farmers have already begun to identify a growing concern related to their accounts receivable and delays in payment due to COVID. Compared to the same period in 2019, the industry is seeing 25% or more of their accounts overdue. For some, this equals to over half of their estimated annual income. These delays put an increased burden and strain on the sector and are clear indicators of financial turbulence and potential bankruptcies down the line. Our lack of financial protection for produce sellers also means we can no longer access protection tools in the US without incurring significant costs. For Canadians to file complaints in the US, we now must post a bond twice the value of the claim. The effects of the COVID-19 pandemic are already being felt south of the border. Over the first 3 quarters of this year, the value of complaints filed
Ron,
under the
Ron, I don't want to interrupt you, but can you move your microphone just a little further from your mouth? The translators are having a bit of an
No
echo.
worries at all, Mr. Chair. Is that better?
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Lower it a little, they tell me.
How was that?
Technology is wonderful. There you go.
There we are. Over the first 3 quarters of this year, the value of complaints filed under the U.S. Perishable Agricultural Commodities Act for non-payment has risen by 52% in 2020 compared to 2019, and this is expected to rise even further in Q4. We urge the government to implement a Canadian limited statutory deemed trust to effectively protect produce sellers during bankruptcy in Canada. It would be fitting for a financial protection mechanism to be included in the Budget Implementation Act, as it would support one of our critical sectors and strengthen our own food sovereignty and security. This no-cost tool has been supported by this committee and the Agri Committee twice, most recently in Recommendation 15 from Enhancing Business Risk Management Report of November 2020. More importantly, the tool would protect sellers domestically, remove complications in cross-border trade in the U.S., and reduce potential costs imposed on Canadian consumers. In closing, thank you to the members for the opportunity to share our comments today, and I will be happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lemaire. Turning to the festivals and major events, Canada, Mr. Roy, Chief Executive Officer. Go ahead.
Bonjour. Hello. FAME and RIMI represent more than 500 festivals and events in Canada through a direct and affiliate membership in a tourism and cultural sector that creates alone more than $1 billion in GDP for the GDP of the country year after year. These associations join the coalition of businesses the most affected, calling for an increase in the emergency wage subsidy for a category of businesses that are most directly affected, as well as increased support for fixed cost and access to cash assets. We have welcomed a number of the measures announced yesterday, for example, the increased wage subsidy. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the MPs who have supported us and thank the government. I'm going to say, of course, that everything is not perfect, but we are going in the right direction. And I wanted to point that out. With regard to the wage subsidy, we have to ensure a great deal of flexibility and take into account that our activities are very seasonal. And if we ask an event that is held in summer to talk about its January revenues, there's no point. With us, cash assets, we believe that the government must intervene financially through a dedicated fund to take care of our cultural organizations' deficits and as well as those for festivals and events, not with loans but with subsidies. Our members, and most of them are nonprofit organizations, have no capital reserves nor capitalization. We believe that the cumulative deficit for our groups is $150 million. Why? Because they have spent to organize but have not been able to hold their events. And they have no revenue. And we ask, therefore, the government to renew urgently investments in the two main programs that best benefit our group. And that was done yesterday. This is a tremendous relief. Our only concern is that, once again, this is only for 1 year. We would need greater reliability in that funding. We have a need for greater permanent help. In up to 2018, more than 1,050 festivals received $31.5 million, $50 million for these programs. Now it's 42.5 in 2019 and 2020. In addition, some tens of millions were added in 2020 because of the pandemic, and we expect this to be 42.5 million in 2021, but with the threat of going back to 31.5 million in 2022. We have also suggested the creation of a Environmental Transition Fund and a digital fund, in addition to the main programs that would allow us to have a more green recovery, and this for the end of the pandemic and beyond, adding therefore digital activities to our work. In the statement yesterday, there was a program that we should create a program for tourist events created by the Conservatives after the 2008 crisis, and which allocated 225 million. This is what the minister referred to on the Tout le Monde en Parle program. He said that he was discussing with Economic Development and Industry Canada, and we would say that this should be implemented through the regional economic development agencies. Yesterday, the announcement of this increase, and this would appear to be a very important program. And this would be a new stimulus program aimed at attracting more tourists to festivals and events within Canada, from within Canada in the current circumstances, and from abroad as soon as that will be possible. We know that a quarter of expenses are made in hotels and lodging, 1/3 in food and beverage. So in a recovery context, a little boost for festivals and events would be seen as an indirect support for restaurants and hotels who have also suffered, as well as transportation, artists and artisans. So we say we should act quickly and prepare the festivals of 2022 now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roy. Turning then to Food and Beverage Canada, Kathleen Sullivan, CEO. Ms. Sullivan, the floor is yours.
Thank you and good afternoon. My name is Kathleen Sullivan and I'm CEO of Food and Beverage Canada, an association representing Canada's food and beverage manufacturers. Food and beverage is the largest manufacturing sector in this country. It includes 7,000 companies employing 290,000 Canadians and generating close to $120 billion in annual revenue. Unfortunately, it is also a sector that is often overlooked. Most of our food does not go straight from the farm to the grocery store. Instead, agriculture products are shipped to Canadian food plants, plants that turn wheat into flour and then bread, turn cow's milk into yogurt and cheese, turn potatoes into pierogies. Food manufacturing is a critical component of Canada's domestic food supply. Our 7,000 companies buy over half of Canada's agriculture output. We add value to crops and livestock production, and most importantly, we ensure that Canada maintains its food sovereignty. We should all be very concerned that with COVID-19, Canada's food system has experienced a series of shocks. The collapse of food service, the disruption of supply chains, the impact of border closures, the additional cost to protect our workers, and most recently, the fees imposed by some of Canada's largest grocery retailers. These shocks have destabilized not just my sector, but the entire food system. In 2018, Dominic Barton and the Agri-Food Economic Strategy Table tapped agri-food to drive economic growth in this country. To achieve this, we will need to address some fundamental issues. Today, I'll focus on three: resolving agri-food's labor problems, rebalancing relationships across the supply chain, and ensuring that our frontline food workers are recognized as a priority and continue to be protected through COVID-19. With respect to labor, even before COVID-19, labor was the biggest issue and the most limiting factor facing our entire agri-food sector. We simply do not have enough people for the jobs we have, and we do not have the right people with the right skills. On any given day, this, Canada's largest manufacturing sector, is short 10% of its workforce. By 2025, we expect to be short 65,000 workers. This is a missed opportunity for our economy. There is demand for Canadian products here at home and abroad, But until we address the industry's labor problems, our ability to invest and grow will remain constrained. We are therefore encouraging the federal government to work with industry to develop a labor action plan for Canada's food and beverage manufacturing sector, and I would say for the entire agri-food sector. Second, rebalancing the supply chain. Canada's grocery sector is overconcentrated. We have just 5 retail companies controlling 80% of Canada's grocery market. This has allowed retailers to regularly impose arbitrary transaction costs, fees, and penalties on their suppliers. Most recently, in the past few months, and despite the pandemic, major retailers have announced even more new fees. This simply can't continue. Other countries have faced this challenge and have addressed it by implementing a grocery code of conduct. We, along with 33 other industry associations and producer groups, are encouraging Canada to do the same. We are pleased that at their meeting last week, the federal, provincial, and territorial agriculture ministers committed to strike a working group to look at this issue. We encourage the federal government to continue to prioritize this and to commit to having a code in place by the end of 2021. Finally, I would like to talk about our frontline food workers. Even in a pandemic, Canadians need to eat. It is thanks to the efforts of our frontline food workers that Canada's food plants continue to operate through COVID-19. This was no easy feat. As companies, we invested an estimated $800 million to keep our workers safe. We have also spent countless hours reinforcing with them the importance of their contribution. It is critical that governments also reinforce our frontline food workers, the essential nature of their work. And as we move forward, in particular, we are asking that governments consider the importance of frontline food workers in any rapid testing and vaccination programs. Despite the measures we have put in place to mitigate risk, food plants remain congregate settings, and it is on all of us to do what we can to ensure our food workers remain healthy while they produce the food that allows us to eat. I thank you for the opportunity to present to you today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sullivan. Turning to Mr. Smith with the Canadian Arts Coalition. Welcome, Mr. Smith. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. It's an honor to be speaking with you this afternoon. As you may know, the Canadian Arts Coalition is a body of arts organizations across the country. It's nonpartisan, collaborative, and it's made up of major arts organizations that are either service organizations or presenting organizations and so on. We had a number of concerns that we presented to you because we were really concerned about the way that COVID-19 has effectively upended the day-to-day life of Canadians and those around the world. And we're particularly concerned about that in the arts, which obviously have been put on hold, as we heard just a little while ago from Fame. We're concerned about how the arts and the broader Canadian society will rebound and how we need to work together to build a truly inclusive society, one in which the arts play a prominent role as they have during these past few months, with many Canadians turning to the arts as a way to get through their days and to enjoy the moments they have while being in isolation or whatever it may be. We're aware at the same time of the economic benefits of the arts, culture, and sports. For example, we understand that in 2016, this contributed about $1.7 billion in our economy. You've heard already about issues with hotels and restaurants from Fame, and we would underscore that. But we also think it's really important in terms of our demography, in terms of Indigenous peoples, persons who are deaf or disabled, the racialized populations as we're going across, and how do we build our sense of Canadians in this way? To give you a sense of the recommendations that we brought forward, we actually did a survey of our members and found a number of startling things that we put into the recommendations. And the recommendations you have in front of you, which were submitted back in June, there have been some changes. Well, one, that funds need to be dedicated to enable a safe, green reopening of arts venues and encourage the public to return to the live arts. That is a challenge that we're going to face as people feel confident about going into rooms that are sizable and have more than, let's say, 5, 10, 15, 100 people. Second, it's really important at this point in time to address some of the systemic issues, particularly issues around systemic racism in the arts funding, by providing funds to ensure enhanced interim, ongoing operational and project funding for Indigenous, racialized, the deaf and disabled, and community-based arts organizations. We feel it's really important to extend income support programs, including EI and CESW, and to begin to consider quite seriously a universal basic income. There really is an important aspect, and Fame mentioned this earlier, about investment in digital technology, as that is the way many of the arts programs that are out there right now online are being presented to the public. We were actually very happy when we saw the economic statement yesterday that addressed some of the issues that we put forward in our paper. So we really want to congratulate the government on these steps. It's important that the increasing maximum wage subsidy rate to 75% be extended from December on into March of 2021. It is important, as we see and we support, providing a top-up of $500 million to the regional development agencies, as Fame had mentioned, and Community Futures Network. Those areas bring in tourists, as we know, and the arts are rather critical to that. And we have a great advantage, given the diversity of our arts programs, that bring people in from around the world to see art by Indigenous people, by people of color, and so on, and also in our regions across the country. So arts are very important here. We're very pleased to see the addition of $181.5 million in the 2021-2022 budget for the Department of Canadian Heritage and Canada Council for the Arts. The safeguard we would want to hope that the safeguard that we would wish to make clear is that those funds should also be used to ensure that there is an inclusive arts ecology, and that for us means paying particular attention to Indigenous artists, artists of color, and to the deaf and disabled, to small, to regional arts organizations, as well as community-based arts organizations. We really think it's important to work across the sectors and also to work across governments as they're beginning to look at how best they can marshal their energies to support the post-COVID or the current COVID crisis and how the arts come through this and also into the future. Those are the concerns that we bring forward to you, and we want to see how, in terms of involvement and implementation, community can be, particularly our organization, the arts and other organizations, so that we can tailor. We've been really quite pleased to see that the recommendations we made to you back in early July, I think it was, are now becoming a reality. And that's because of the attention that the government is paying to people who are in the field, who have their finger on the pulse, and are able to channel that information into you so that you can consider, I think the expression is, you're flying, you're building it as you're flying. Well, we're on that plane with you and want to be able to construct as you move along as well. I think that's all I really wanted to say this afternoon, other than we look forward to remaining involved with the government as it moves forward on this timely matter to ensure that the arts are essential in Canadian lives and that the arts ecology is inclusive, as I mentioned, and it builds a social cohesion and identity of who we are as Canadians. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith, and I neglected to thank people in the beginning for their submissions prior to the middle of August, which seems like about half a century ago, but thank you for your written submissions as well, and what is in those submissions will be considered as part of the consultation. We'll turn to a 6-minute round first. We'll start with Mr. Kelly, and that'll be followed by Ms. Kotrakis and Mr. Fragaskatis, who will split their time, and then on to Mr. St. Marie. Mr. Kelly, floor is yours.
Hey, thank you. And my first question is for Mr. Waugh. Many Canadians many countries are planning to commence vaccinations as early as next week and plan to have, in some cases, their vaccinations completed by June. What would the impact of having vaccines out and completed to the majority of Canadians early next year have on next summer's festival industry?
Well, Obviously, vaccines would be a game changer, and this would allow us to renew our activities. And now the challenge is not just vaccination, it's predictability. And we don't really know what the calendar will be for the vaccine program. But if the vaccination program goes on through June, we have to take decisions beforehand to know several months ahead what we can organize. So you can understand that we really need to have a better idea of the calendar for vaccination in order to plan our activities. And the other thing with vaccinations is the tests, because we think that testing and traceability is improved. We could have a checkpoint at the entry to festivals, and this would not only have the vaccination but the test and the check at the entrance.
Having the ability to rapidly test people would undoubtedly improve the ability to hold festivals as well. I mean, I come from Calgary, home to one of the premier destination festivals in the country. It was heartbreaking to Calgary to lose the Stampede last year. The Stampede is the second week of July. You mentioned the calendar. We've been trying to get answers from the government repeatedly about the vaccination calendar and when vaccines will start, when they'll be available, and when the majority of Canadians might expect to receive a vaccination. Would it help your industry to know that when vaccinations would begin and when the majority of Canadians would complete? Would it be more helpful to have vaccines done by June or by September for the summer festival circuit?
Of course, if we want to save the summer 2021 season, the vaccination would be very important, and vaccination for a large segment of the population, because most of the festivals and activities, for example, the Stampede, so we're in a northern country, and many events take place in June to September, so it'd be important to vaccinate as many people as possible before the summer in order to have a normal, in quotation marks, season.
Do any of the festivals that are members of your association, do they currently have access to rapid tests that would, as you put it, at the entrance to a festival to be able to test people quickly? I mean, does that exist?
No, we don't have access to that yet, far from it, but we are carefully watching what's happening at the Calgary airport and how, because if the rapid tests become available, we can use them not only at festivals and events, but in restaurants and elsewhere. But we still have heard that these rapid tests in the health area or health workers, but are available. But we still don't have any information on when that might be available to the cultural and events sector. So that'll be very useful.
Do you have interaction with counterparts in other countries around their planning for summer festivals?
Yes, we have had exchanges with others. For example, we're working with an association from Europe which called Together, and they've really decided to continue to operate in 2021. They've developed a manifesto for about 120 festivals under the banner of Festivals 2021, we believe. And they think they are determined to recommence their activities in summer next year.
Wrap
Did
up
they-
in 30 seconds here.
How about, are their decisions driven by the availability of vaccines in their own countries and or rapid testing?
Not necessarily, but the health directives vary from country to country and jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Now, after all these long months of pandemic, we know that the risks are somewhat limited outside if you wear a mask. And if we continue to encourage the use of masks inside as well, there are a number of innovative things that can be done to and not have people, one on top of each other, in order to ensure safety. And so there have been ways like the drive-in movies and drive-in theaters, other options where you can keep distancing, and that could encourage. That's a way of encouraging events using social distancing and masks.
Ms. Koutrakis taking about 3 minutes, splitting with Mr. Fragiskatis. Annie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all our witnesses for your presentations this afternoon. For the interest of time, I will address all my questions to Mr. Lemaire, and I'll try and get as much as I can for my 3 minutes. I listened carefully to your testimony, and especially with regard to your comments on the Perishable Agricultural Commodities Act, the PACA. So my understanding is that the lack of a Canadian equivalent is a major barrier to our Canadian producers. Can you comment on what a Canadian version of the PACA would look like, and how would it compare to the US PACA? And do you know if at this moment we're working on putting something like that in place?
So the quick answer to that is we have one more piece of a three-legged stool to put together, and that is the implementation of a financial protection tool that would protect produce sellers and farmers in the event of a bankruptcy, so the statutory deemed trust. The other tools that exist within the Perishable Agricultural Commodities Act, under the leadership of the Liberal government with Minister Van Cleef back in 2000, there was a model put in place which operates now under the Dispute Resolution Corporation, where companies similar to the claims that happen through PAC in the US, we have a similar model here for dispute resolution. The only piece that we're missing is the bankruptcy tool. And the best of intentions of the federal government with protections for farmers under BIA, but unfortunately, they do not protect fresh fruit and vegetable farmers and sellers because of the unique attribute of how we grow, sell, and market our products. So we're outside of the tent relative to the protections of our current regulations.
And once a limited statutory deemed trust similar to the PACA is in place, can we expect preferential treatment for Canadian producers? And how quickly do you think that could be reinstated, if at all, very quickly?
Most definitely. So it doesn't require any presidential intervention in the US to reinstate our access. It's a letter from the Perishable Agricultural Commodity Act team, basically their administration there, saying that they recognize the equivalency and that Canadian farmers exporting to the US have access, preferential access again. We were the only country that had that access prior to 2014 when it was taken away. And they've identified that their intent is ideally to have it back in place.
Do we know why they took it away, Mr. Lemaire? I understand that we didn't hold perhaps our side of the bargain, or we didn't offer something similar to the US producers. Am I correct?
You're correct. 30 years ballpark of talking about getting there, and we got very close with creating the DRC, the Dispute Resolution Corporation, and the program within that model. But without the bankruptcy, they finally said we need that last leg of the three-legged stool to make it work. So
Okay.
inspection, destination inspection, dispute resolution, and bankruptcy.
Thank you. Thank you both, Mr. Fragiskatis.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Lemaire, you talked about the connection between the family farm and restaurants. Like all MPs on this committee, I'm very concerned about the future of restaurants beyond the fact that I have many in my community, as we all do. I grew up in that sector. My father was a restaurateur before his retirement. The same is true of his brothers, sisters. Every relative that we have in Canada actually is involved in the restaurant business. So I do want to ask you to elaborate on that, the connection between restaurants and the family farm. And I think we're also concerned about family farms, as we naturally should be. They're so central to the well-being of Canada. I wonder if you could elaborate on the fact that the family farms of this country require restaurants to be strong, and vice versa.
Most definitely. So if you can imagine the way produce is sold is while there are larger farms, the majority of the product is grown by small farm operations and then consolidated and then sold through maybe a dealer, which is another farmer, or to wholesale, or even through jobbers. And the jobber is a small operation. It could be one truck that picks up product either right from the farm and or from a wholesale market that distributes to restaurants in the Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver markets, the Calgary markets. The complexity of the procurement and distribution to food service trickles right back to the family farm. And because we have a term in produce, sell it or smell it, it's extremely perishable. You need to move the product quickly when it's pulled out of the ground, put into the system, and sold to the end user. And through that system, if you are moving product and the restaurant is not able to pay, it may have to go through 2 or 3 other hands before it goes down to the farmer, the grower. In some cases, there's a direct line, but as Ms. Sullivan mentioned, there's many pieces in our food system between the farmer and the end point of food. So any break in that system could cause a dramatic impact to the farmer himself.
Challenges all the more pressing in the context of COVID-19. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. This is one, and I'll say, Ron, I don't know why we can't get it over the finish line. We've recommended a couple of times at Finance Committee this be done. I understand the Agriculture Committee has just recommended it be done. So if anybody's listening from Finance, let's get this damn thing done. Mr. Gabriel, please.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the witnesses for being here. My questions are for Mr. Roy. So you talked to us about your reaction to the economic update and what's coming, and what is the morale level with your members, and what has to be done for them? I mean, you recalled your recommendations. I would like you to re-explain your recommendations. Well, as I said, there are some measures that encouraged us, but they're overall we're still fairly discouraged because even a few months ago, people were saying that we've lost a year. This has been hard to do, but if that continues, it's going to be even worse. And this is what we see ahead. We don't really see any great improvement in 2021, any return to normalcy, and we think it might be more towards 2022. And we have virtually no revenue coming other than the subsidies, and that's what's helping us to stay alive. And that's the reality for us. And what do we ask for? Well, there's the wage subsidy. There's been a lot of progress, as you've said, and this is something that's good for our situation. We talked about the Heritage Canada budget that was improved, but we're the drop in the benefit is only being delayed by a year. And so once in 2022, we're going to see a drop in our subsidies. But above all, the question or the answer with regard to economic recovery, that means that we need the programs for the important program that was created by the Conservatives after the 2008 fiscal crisis. And this would be an excellent boost for tourism and for our sector. And we have to do more than was done in that program. And this is also a benefit, indirect benefit for hotels and restaurants. And the recommendations made at the time with regard to the program when it ended in 2011, at that time, some of the lessons learned were that we know that there's time needed to define proposals for projects, and there has to be the time taken to include and collect data. And this is something that's very important. It's something urgent for us. And for us in the festival and event sector, we have to start preparing now for what we're going to be doing in 12 to 15 months. So that has to be reflected in the budget so that we can ensure a recovery for our sector. Thank you very much. And of course, it's very sad to see that summer 2020 has been a complete loss, basically, for your members, and I understand that could well be the same thing for next summer, based on public health concerns. And with regard to the continuation of the rent and wage subsidies until June of next year, so I understand that if Health Canada or the Public Health maintains the health restrictions, it's the government is going to have to prolong these interventions. Yes, you're quite right. There's a clear link between the public health aspect and the continuation of the programs. But if we want to have festivals next summer, the most concerned, we're the most the hardest hit businesses in the pandemic, because 3 or 5% of our businesses and our contribution to restaurants and hotels, and we cannot have a one-size-fits-all solution. There are businesses that need programs that take into account the reality of the situation we're facing, and I think that we may well need the wage subsidy well beyond June 2021. In some sectors, they may not need it, but certainly for our sector, we will need it. Thank you very much. How much time do I have left?
Monsieur Roy.
Mr. Roy, you have about a minute to add something. Well, I think that I've visited your riding fairly often, Joliette and the Lenaudière Festival, an excellent festival, and I think this is an event that there has been good news with an additional $30 million that we'll be receiving, and this is a good news for economic recovery for our sector across Canada. And with the new director, of course, the festival in my riding is very dynamic.
Mr. Boularus, who will be followed by Mr. Falk. Mr. Boularus, 6 minutes.
Parfait, merci. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. We're all very aware of the effect of the pandemic on the health sector, but also on the economy, and we've also brought up sectors that are more affected. We talked about restaurants, hotels, but I would also add tourism and air transport and aeronautics, and now the cultural sector. And so my first questions would go to Mr. Smith and Mr. Well, I'll come back to you. I'm not forgetting you. But for the Canadian Arts Coalition, what is the situation for your members? And then I would like to ask you more detailed questions, because we've heard that it was a breath of fresh air yesterday in the economic declaration.
The situation for our members is rather precarious. Like fame in a way, but at perhaps a different level, artists are basically unable to perform. In many cases, they cannot rehearse. Their income predominantly comes from performing, creating, rehearsing, etc. And so without that, they have rather a bleak time at the moment and are very concerned about what the future will hold. So while the wage subsidy is in place and CERB continues, there are questions what will come after that. And does that supplement enough during the current crisis that we're in? We've seen small, medium, large venues that are closed right now. And as a result, not just the loss of revenue, but also the sense of what is opportunities for the public to see live performing arts. And one question that was asked earlier, which I think needs to be underlined, is even with the vaccine, we still don't know the level of confidence the public will have in going into venues for live performances. How comfortable people actually feel. Will they wait to see how effective the vaccine has been, and so on. So those are really big concerns. We are very concerned about the more marginalized artists, Indigenous artists, artists of color, the deaf and disabled, who are already hanging on by their fingernails and now are finding it incredibly difficult because they were sort of last into the funding system, so to speak. And so as a result are more hard hit, more difficult times than others are.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Yesterday, there was supplementary assistance that was announced. Mr. Wall and I wrote to the Minister of Heritage to ask for dedicated funds for arts, and I'm happy that there was something. And you talked about the importance, Mr. Smith, of the importance of artists and the concept of a guaranteed minimum income or basic income that would provide a safety net, a social safety net. I would like to know, I mean, we have a motion by my colleague from Winnipeg, and I would wonder how you think that would help your members and how that would give more security to the world of culture, the artists and artisans.
I haven't seen the particular motion, but I suspect if it's about a universal basic income, it would be very supported by the arts community. There have been a number of surveys, including our own, that artists have put this forward as a what we would like kind of see as a real requirement in order to sustain ourselves through not only this time but into the future. We really don't know how long this pandemic is going to have an impact on our society. And we could be losing some great workers, some sectors of the arts ecology. And we have to remember, we agree with Fame that arts is also about bringing people together. It's about tourism. It is also about restaurants, about hotels, the impact it has on the economy. And we think that because of the diversity of our population, we have a unique gift that we can offer Canadians and the world. So we really should be investing in that as much as possible to ensure that we can offer this into the coming months and into the future years.
Last question for Mr. Smith. And I don't know if it's the situation in all provinces, but sometimes it's hard to follow the recommendations right now. For example, here, shopping centers are open, but theaters, cinemas, museums are closed. What's the effect on your community, on the cultural community? And I think that there can be some level of frustration with it.
Oh, it's incredible frustration. Not so much that malls might be open and stores open, because obviously, people are passing through those. However, there's a similarity with museums and galleries. It's the concern about the performing arts, in particular, where people would be sitting, where they might be sitting next to each other. So in our research, for example, we noticed that in Germany, I think it was a symphony orchestra that tore up half the seats in their theater in order to be able to get to live performances. Of course, that was very heavily subsidized by the German government as well. So there are real questions about when will performing arts spaces be able to open safely? And will that vary based upon the size of the Performing Arts Center, whether it's small versus medium versus large, a 3,000 seat proscenium, for example, versus something that holds 100 people. But I want to underline one of the things we brought forward is that there really is going to need to be a marketing strategy to convince Canadians that things are safe, or to encourage Canadians to try. And that is something that we think should be done in a collaborative manner between government and arts organizations to say, yes, we are working together to make sure that the environment is safe. And we encourage you to take the chance because we believe, the PPE is in place, the sanitizers are in place, foyers have been taken care of, front of house is taken care of, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, thank you both. We'll turn to Mr. Falk for 5 minutes, and we'll close off with Ms. Zerowitz with the last 5. Ted?
Thank you, Mr. Easter. To Ms. Sullivan, I'd like to ask you a few questions about your presentation. You've indicated one of the ongoing challenges in your industry is the labor shortage. We know that the federal government has been doling out billions of dollars paying people to stay home. How has this affected your industry?
Well, it's certainly been a contributing factor in our labor challenges. We went into COVID-19 with a shortage of labor, and certainly we're now at about 10% vacancy rate on any given day, so it has been difficult. There are circumstances where companies have felt that they have had a challenge in filling positions because of some of the support that has been available. Certainly the problem is more complex than that, though, so I wouldn't chalk it all up to that. But we are seeing definitely this dichotomy between having such a high vacancy rate in an industry when we're also facing such high unemployment in the general economy.
Correct. Yeah, and from our previous panel, we heard of the employment levels being up and people looking for work, and for high-paying jobs. And I know your industry is actually very good at creating high-paying full-time jobs for people.
Yeah, so we employ about 300,000 people, and it runs anywhere, obviously, from executives to food scientists, marketing experts. The vast majority of our workers, in fact, are what we call frontline food workers. So the people you think of on the assembly line, butchers, jobs that are quite accessible, well-paying, stable jobs, quite accessible to people who may have just fundamental skill levels. But I will tell you, have vacancies across the board. One of the biggest areas we have a problem is, in fact, in skilled trades, where we see a huge deficit across the entire manufacturing sector. Yeah. And I will say that all of Canada's manufacturing industries are at great risk if we don't start to address that.
Yeah, we need to do some better pairing with the workforce and
yes,
and the demand. A lot of your manufacturers, your processors have had to shift focus from providing a restaurant industry to providing a retail industry. Can you talk a little bit about the complexities that has caused for your industry? They've obviously had to retool up. They've got to create and manufacture different packaging. What kind of stress has that put on the industry?
So it's been very stressful. You have to remember, from the day that the pandemic was declared back in March, the food companies didn't shut down. And so suddenly, 7,000 food companies across the country became experts in epidemiology and how do you keep workers safe from a pandemic. The cost of all of the measures we've put into place, so PPE, but plexiglass barriers, additional cleaning, slowing down production lines so you can space people apart, that's been about $800 million. So it's had a massive impact on the sector.
The government has talked about providing financial assistance to businesses that need to retool and all that in exchange for an equity position. How many of your association members want to give up equity in their companies for financing?
I don't think I would be able to find one that would.
Right. I think you're right. I don't think one of them wants that proposal. Another question, my constituents have told me that food prices in the grocery stores have increased significantly this past year. Would your processors and manufacturers vouch that their clients, the retail sector, have increased their prices substantially?
So I can only speak to the prices that we are paid by the retailers. And I think what we have found is that there has been a flatlining of prices. In fact, some of our companies have said that retailers say to them not to even try to pass on a price increase, which obviously just puts food manufacturers in the middle. And ultimately, those cost pressures where they can get pushed down to farmers as well, which I don't think is of any benefit to Canadians and to the security of our supplies, food supply.
Last question,
Right.
Ted.
Yeah, that's what I suspected. I thought too that from the manufacturing perspective, probably the pricing was pretty flat.
Yeah.
But we know from the retail side, the grocery store chains have certainly been opportunistic in raising their prices. And yet we still have an environment where the government gives them $12 million to upgrade refrigerators. Just seems a little strange.
Well, a bigger concern for us right now is, I know most of you have been following, is that retailers have in fact arbitrarily increased fees on food processors and the suppliers. So we're in a position where our costs have gone up almost $1 billion. We can't pass any price increases on through retail, and retailers in the middle of a pandemic are asking us to pay them in order to make their capital improvements. So we're seeing incredible pressures on the food supply chain. It's just not something that's sustainable.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Thank you, Mr. Easter.
Thank you. And just on that last point, I can tell you what one food chain did in Prince Edward Island cost our small dairy $2 million out of their bottom line. That's how serious this is, and that's not a big dairy co-op. So the last 5 minutes will go to you, Ms. Zerowitz. You're on.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank all the presenters for their excellent presentations today. Everything that you've talked about is very important. I'm actually going to start off with where Mr. Falk had left off with Ms. Sullivan. Ms. Sullivan, thank you so much for being here. I very much spend a lot of time on skills and labor as well as on immigration, as you may know. Just because I think when people talk about food and beverage, they're either thinking agricultural workers or they're thinking about the front line that are actually sort of, selling the products. But there's actually a whole bunch of other sort of laborers in the, can you just give a few more examples of who else we're talking about, particularly the ones that we're short of?
Sure. So we are talking about entry-level positions in food companies. So in any manufacturing facility, if you think about the quintessential assembly line.
Yeah.
So we are looking at people who might be working along that line, adding the hazelnut in the Ferrero Rocher, for example.
Yeah.
You are looking at technicians. More and more our plants are automated, and so we need computer technicians to calibrate all of the equipment. We need skilled tradespeople, electricians, millwrights. We need food scientists. We need marketers. We need executives. We are probably one of the most diverse industries in terms of hiring. And we frankly need people right across the board. We're right now short, as I said, about 30,000 people, and the companies are all hiring.
So I have two more questions for you, and then I still have to get to a couple of other people. So do you think this is a labor issue or a wage issue?
It's complex. It's a number of different things. I mean, certainly what we find is that most of the frontline jobs are probably above minimum wage, but these are lower level, lower paid positions for sure. One of the big challenges we have, of course, is that when you're in an industry that has all of this pressure on your costs and on what you can pay, it makes it very difficult to increase wages. And also a lot of our plants are in areas where the wages would be good in some regions, but if you're on the outskirts of Toronto, it makes it very difficult for people. So there's a whole complex of factors that are at play here that we really need to get into. And I think the big challenge is we've got the largest manufacturing sector in the country, and we're not tackling this.
So then my last question is, how do you think we can actually address the issue? Do you think it's going to be all addressed internally, or, Minister Mendocino announced an increase in immigration levels. Do you think we're going to be sort of getting it, addressing it from some of the internal immigration numbers, or do you think it's a mixture?
It's both. So part of it is looking at Canadians and seeing, are there underrepresented groups in our workforce, women, people of color, people with disabilities, people from First Nations, that we can take a look at what the barriers are for them in actually entering the workforce so that we can draw on them. It's also about reskilling people. At the end of the day, though, going into COVID, we had a labor deficit in this country. And so we absolutely need to look at our immigration programs and understand how we not just look at the global number of people we're bringing in the country, but what skills we're bringing in. And remember that we don't just need doctors and computer scientists, we need people from across the spectrum. And we need to welcome these people in because we are desperate for them.
Thank you so much. My next maybe comment and maybe slight question is for Mr. Smith. I just want to say, because, you know, I'm blessed to be in a riding where there's tons of artists and those in the cultural sector. I just want to say very much appreciate your presentation, your recommendations. I think you were very clear. You spoke to us about your recommendation 1 about reopening. I think 2, 3, and 4 are quite clear in terms of what you talked about. Maybe if you could spend maybe 15 seconds just on your last one, engaging the private sector in increasing the charitable tax credit. Maybe if you could give us a couple of seconds about that, and then I have one last question.
Sure. A number of the arts organizations do work with business arts, which attempts to, and quite successfully get businesses to invest in the arts. And this is really another way of providing funding into the arts, is to encourage businesses to do so. And there are many benefits for them in terms of sponsorships and so on. And also some of our artists actually do workshops within business organizations that really do kind of inspire their workers to be better colleagues and so on and so forth. So those are really kinds of interesting things that we think would be really quite important, is to, not just the reliance on government funding, but the reliance on the ability to access private sector funding more readily than we currently
Thank you so much for that. And my last question is to Mr. Roy. Mr. Roy.
Very
Mr.
quickly,
Roy,
Julie, we're going to take time
quick.
from another committee.
No worries. Mr. Roy, there's been 15 live venues that have actually closed in my city of Toronto. Do you have a specific recommendation on how we can address that at the federal level?
I don't know if I understood the question. You talked about venues.
Venues.
Oh, venues
have closed in Toronto. How would you suggest that we address the problem?
Well, I think that one of the recommendations is to deal with the deficits, and we love these organizations. And the government has to intervene, and not just loans, but better help, better support.
Well, we will have to end it there. I know time is tight, and under a new situation with the Zoom, we can't dig into another committee's time. So I would like to, on behalf of all the members of the committee, certainly thank the panelists who appeared before us on fairly short notice, and also thank you for your submissions in the spring. Both your testimony today and your submissions will be taken into consideration as we try and make some recommendations for the budget in 2021. With that, we will see everyone at 3:30 on Thursday for a couple of more panels. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.